The first time I realized my sister hated me, I was 7 years old and bleeding from the mouth. She said it was an accident. I believed her. That's how it started, really. With a swing set, a push too hard, and a smile she wore just a little too long after I hit the ground face first. My name's Adam. I'm 28 now. Back then, she was 9 and already the golden child of the family. Rachel, the beam of light, the angel, the one who would never do something like that on purpose. Meanwhile, I was the clumsy little brother who must have tripped. And somehow, over the years, that became the script we all agreed to read from. Her word against mine. And her word always won. I grew up in her shadow. It wasn't even subtle. Rachel got new clothes, I got hand-me-downs. Rachel got praise for B-minuses, I got silence for straight A's. She'd get away with breaking curfew, stealing, screaming at our parents, and they'd still pat her on the head and say, "She's just expressive." But if I forgot to say thank you once after dinner, full lecture. No phone for a week. Our dad called her fire and me fog. I didn't even know what that meant until years later, and by then it was too late to ask without sounding like I was still keeping score. We weren't poor, but my parents acted like every dollar spent on me was a sacrifice. My shoes were always a size too small. My haircuts were done in the garage with kitchen scissors. Rachel had salon appointments and a debit card by 15. And maybe none of that would have mattered. Maybe I could have let it go. If Rachel wasn't so good at pretending to love me in public. That was the part that twisted the knife. Outside the house, she'd act like I was her baby brother, the one she protected, the one she bragged about. But when the door closed and the makeup came off, her smile turned into a smirk, and every conversation became a trap. She had a way of saying things that seemed harmless on the surface. "You don't really want to go, do you?" Or, "You wouldn't understand. It's a girl thing." But layered in those words was always the same message. "You don't belong. You're not good enough. Stay in your lane." And my parents? They'd just nod along. My mom once told me, "You should be more like your sister." I asked her why, and she said, "Because life would be easier for all of us." By the time we hit our 20s, we barely spoke unless we had to. Rachel went off to study fashion and business. At an overpriced private college my parents practically went broke to afford, and I got a partial scholarship for engineering. I paid my way through the rest. No help. Not a dime. Not even a congratulations when I graduated top of my class. Rachel, meanwhile, failed 2 semesters, switched majors 3 times, and still got a leased Mercedes for her 23rd birthday, just to make her feel better. I was working nights at a warehouse back then. When I called to say happy birthday, she laughed and asked if I still smelled like boxes. It wasn't just favoritism. It was something deeper. Something that made me feel like I wasn't part of the family tree. Just some branch they never wanted but couldn't quite prune. But I kept my head down. I kept working. I got promoted, saved up, moved into my own place. I started my own tech consulting firm last year. It's small, but it's growing. I even hired a couple of interns last month. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was building something for myself, not because I needed to prove anything to them, but because I deserved it. I didn't tell my parents much about it. And Rachel? She didn't ask. Then came the wedding. She got engaged to this guy named Trevor. Tall, clean-cut, quiet. A bit older. Works in finance. The kind of guy my dad probably saw as an upgrade to the family bloodline. I met him twice before the engagement was announced. He seemed nice enough. Polite, well-spoken. A little too polished, if you ask me. Like he was always rehearsing. But Rachel was head over heels. Or at least she played the part well. They met on some beach vacation paid for by one of her sugar daddy clients. Yeah, she never said the word out loud, but we all knew. She called them mentors or benefactors or business partners. And yet somehow, she always had the latest bags, shoes, tech, and trips. Meanwhile, Trevor was just there. A stabilizer. The safe pick. Which is why it shocked me when I found out about the messages. I wasn't even trying to dig. I swear. It just happened one night when I visited my parents for dinner. Rachel had left her laptop open in the living room. I walked past it on my way to the kitchen, saw the screen was still active, and the name Shelley popped up in her iMessage window with a new message. I wasn't going to read it. I really wasn't. But my name was in the message. Clear as day. It said, "Ugh, Adam's going to be there, right?" I swear, he sucks the joy out of every room. Then Rachel replied, "Whatever. He'll probably show up in some thrift suit and act like he's doing us a favor." I just need him to behave until the honeymoon's paid off. I stopped walking. Something about that phrasing caught me off guard. Until the honeymoon's paid off. It didn't make sense at first. Then I scrolled up. What I found, I don't even know how to explain it. Page after page of messages between Rachel and Shelley, talking about Trevor like he was a prize to win, a bank to drain, a puppet to control. She admitted she didn't love him. Said she was playing the part until the ring was on, the wedding gifts collected, and the all-expenses-paid honeymoon was done. Then, she planned to phase him out. That was her phrase. Phase. Him. Out. I couldn't stop reading. It was like watching a car crash. She mocked his laugh, his taste in music. Said she could barely keep a straight face during their deep conversations. She even joked about how he looked during sex. Like a confused deer, she wrote. But hey, he pays for dinner, so it balances out. My hands were shaking. I didn't take screenshots. I didn't forward the messages. Not yet. I closed the laptop, went to the bathroom, and stared at my own face for a long time. Then I left. I made an excuse about a work call. I didn't even finish dinner. My parents barely noticed. That was 2 months ago. The wedding planning went into full gear after that. I tried to keep my distance, but Rachel kept roping me in, guilt-tripping me. Come on, it's just one afternoon. Don't be dramatic. I need my brother there. Like none of it had ever happened. Like I was still just the background character in the Rachel show. My parents called me selfish when I said I didn't want to help with the venue setup. My mom even said, "Don't ruin this for your sister. You know how hard she's worked for this." I wanted to laugh, or scream, or both. But instead, I smiled. And I started planning. I knew I couldn't just tell Trevor. He'd never believe me. Or worse, Rachel would spin it, make it look like I was jealous, bitter, trying to sabotage her happiness. No, if I was going to expose her, I needed proof. Solid, undeniable, in her own words, proof. And I needed to time it just right. Because this wasn't just about Trevor. This was about every time I'd been told to stay silent, to be the bigger person, to take the hit so Rachel could shine. It was about a lifetime of swallowing my pride, burying my anger, and pretending I didn't notice the way she smiled when things went wrong for me. So I waited. I watched. And the night before the wedding, I struck gold. The night before the wedding was suffocating in that uniquely fake way only family events can be. The kind where everyone's smiling, laughing, drinking champagne, but every conversation is razor-edged, every word dipped in polite venom. I wasn't supposed to be there. I'd RSVP'd, maybe for everything, and quietly hoped they'd take the hint. But Rachel called me personally that afternoon. Voice syrupy sweet. "Adam, look, I know things have been weird, but it would mean a lot to Mom and Dad if you came to the rehearsal dinner. Just show your face. Please." That "please" sat in my ear like a splinter. I should have said no. I should have blocked the number. But I didn't, because I'd already made my decision. And to pull it off, I had to keep playing the role. The dutiful brother. The shy, awkward shadow everyone expected me to be. So I put on a blazer I didn't care about, faked a smile, and showed up at the country club. The moment I walked in, Rachel waved me over like I was a waiter, not her brother. Finally, she whispered through clenched teeth, "You're late." I checked my watch. "It's 6:58. She blinked. "We said 6:30. "No. The text said 7. She rolled her eyes. "Whatever. Just sit at table 4 and don't screw anything up." I wish I could say that was the moment I snapped. That I stood up, flipped the table, and let it all out. But I didn't. I just nodded, walked past her, and sat exactly where she told me to. Because that's what she expected. And I needed her to keep expecting it. Dinner was a blur of dull chicken, clinking glasses, and forced speeches. Rachel's friends looked like a carbon copy Pinterest board. Designer dresses, glossy lips, identical laughs. Shelley, the one from the texts, sat at the head bridesmaid seat, giggling every time Rachel made a joke at my expense. "Adam, remember that time you tried to ask out Rachel's friend and she thought you were the Uber driver? Adam, you still wear thrift shop shoes, right? That's like your thing." Every time I laughed along, I felt like I was selling another piece of my spine. Then Trevor stood up to give a toast. He looked nervous. Sweaty palms, shaky voice, but genuine. He talked about how Rachel changed his life, how she was the kindest, smartest, most driven woman he'd ever met. My jaw tightened with every word, because I'd read her messages. I knew she called him a walking tax refund. I knew she said she was going to milk the honeymoon, then ghost him like an unpaid invoice. And yet there he was, eyes glassy, thanking her for saving him. I had to excuse myself halfway through. I told them I needed fresh air. Truth was, I was about 2 seconds from vomiting. Or screaming. Maybe both. I stepped outside into the chilly night, pacing the golf course path behind the building. My head was spinning. All the memories, being pushed aside, talked over, ridiculed for sport, started clawing up my throat. I stood there, hands on my knees, just trying to breathe. And then I heard it. Laughter. High-pitched. Too familiar. I turned and saw Rachel and Shelley standing on the back patio a few feet away, just out of view from the rest of the guests. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but when I heard my name, I froze. She better not bail tomorrow, Shelley was saying. I swear, if she pulls another emotional breakdown stunt. Rachel cut her off. She won't. I already told her if she causes drama, I'll accidentally forward those nudes to Trevor's office email. That got her in line real quick. Shelley burst out laughing. You're evil. Rachel snorted. Please. I'm tired of cleaning up after other people's messes. This wedding is the biggest thing I've ever done. I'm not letting anyone ruin it. Not even Adam. Shelley paused. You think he suspects anything? Rachel, Adam? Are you kidding? He's so desperate for validation. I could set him on fire, and he'd thank me for the warmth. My stomach turned to ice. They both laughed again, then clinked their glasses. I backed away slowly, heart pounding in my chest, and slipped into the parking lot before they noticed me. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, staring at the steering wheel. My hand was shaking. Not from anger, at least not entirely. It was something else. Some sick cocktail of humiliation, disgust, and disbelief. I thought I was numb to her by now. But hearing her say it like that, out loud, sober, proud, it shattered something. That was my breaking point. I drove straight home and pulled out the external drive I'd been compiling. Not just the messages I'd found earlier, but the ones I quietly gathered over the weeks that followed. Screenshots, voice memos, a few videos, too. Rachel drunk at her bachelorette party, slurring about how Trevor's too boring to cheat on me, which is perfect, and I'm going to make him pay off my credit cards before the end of the year. I had receipts, hours of them, enough to set fire to everything she'd built with one click. But I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was going too far. If I was becoming her. If revenge would actually make me feel better, or just leave another hole I couldn't fill. Then I remembered her words. He'd thank me for the warmth. And I realized something. She didn't just hurt me. She counted on me never fighting back. That was her real power. She wasn't just cruel. She was certain I'd always take it. Because I always had. Until now. The morning of the wedding, I dressed carefully. Charcoal suit. Crisp shirt. Tie that didn't scream for attention. Just clean. Quiet. Collected. I arrived early, like they asked, and no one even looked surprised. Just a few tired nods, a weak smile from Mom, and a passive-aggressive comment from Dad about not forgetting the rings this time. Even though I wasn't the best man. I smiled, nodded, and said, wouldn't want to disappoint anyone. The hours blurred into makeup chairs and photo sessions. Rachel had a whole squad of bridesmaids around her, fluffing her dress, adjusting her curls, taking selfies like it was a red carpet. I stayed out of the way, watched, waited. She didn't say much to me at first, just gave me a once-over and said, at least you don't look homeless today. But then, just as the ceremony was about to begin, it happened. She pulled me aside. We were standing near the back hallway of the chapel, just out of view of the guests. Music was playing softly inside. The photographer was snapping candids nearby. Rachel looked radiant, of course. She always did. Her veil shimmered in the light. Her lips were perfectly glossed. She leaned in close, fixed my tie unnecessarily, and whispered, please don't ruin this day like you ruined everything else. I didn't move, didn't blink. She waited for a reaction. A flinch, a frown, some sign she'd gotten under my skin. I gave her none. Instead, I smiled, reached up, fixed her veil, straightened it gently like I actually cared. And then I stepped back, slipped my hand into my pocket, and quietly tucked a small USB drive into her groom's tuxedo jacket. He didn't notice. He was laughing at something his groomsman said, facing the opposite direction. Rachel was still watching me, slightly puzzled. I said, you look beautiful. Then I turned and walked down the aisle to take my seat. She had no idea, and neither did Trevor. But by the time they kissed and the champagne was poured, he'd know everything. And the look on her face? That would be worth every second of silence I'd ever suffered through. But the way it actually played out? Even I couldn't have predicted that. Not in a million years. They say revenge is best served cold. But no one ever talks about the part after. The silence that follows. The crackling tension right before the storm breaks. That morning at the chapel, when I slipped the USB into Trevor's jacket, I thought I was calm. I thought I'd finally claimed a piece of the dignity Rachel spent her life tearing away. But as I sat in the front row, hands folded, watching them say their vows beneath white flowers and soft lighting, something unexpected bloomed inside me. Doubt. Not about what I'd done. I knew Rachel deserved every second of what was coming, but about what came next. I didn't know who I was without the bitterness. Without the role of the silent brother, the scapegoat, the convenient emotional punching bag. I had been her shadow for so long. I wasn't sure I'd recognize my own reflection once I stepped into the light. The ceremony ended in a blur of organ music and applause. Rachel and Trevor walked hand in hand down the aisle as the officiant announced them husband and wife. Cameras flashed. Guests cheered. Rachel shot me a smug look as she passed, some mix of victory and vanity in her eyes. And Trevor looked content, still unaware, still believing he'd married the woman of his dreams. I remember gripping the edge of my seat and wondering if I'd just set off a bomb in the middle of two families. Because that USB wasn't subtle. It had everything. Folder after folder of screenshots, audio clips, video files, all carefully labeled. I made sure it would auto-launch into a slideshow of highlights when plugged into any computer. I even included a note. She said you were too boring to cheat on her. Still want to go to Fiji? Dramatic? Probably. But Rachel's entire life was one big drama. I just finally gave her the spotlight she'd always craved, uncut and censored and unfiltered. At the reception, the energy shifted. Not all at once, but in waves. People were mingling, sipping champagne, taking photos in front of a flower wall. Then I saw Trevor's best man, Chris, I think his name was, walk over to him and hand him something. A small black object. The USB. My heart jumped into my throat. Trevor took it, looked confused, tilted his head, then nodded, slipped it into his pocket, and walked away from the crowd, toward the venue office. I stood up, almost out of instinct, but forced myself back down. This was it. No going back. I felt like a man standing on a frozen lake, hearing the first crack beneath his feet. The next 30 minutes were agony. Rachel was surrounded by guests, laughing, glowing, taking compliments on her dress. She looked at me once across the room, raised her glass, and gave me that same patronizing smile she'd worn since we were kids. I matched it, but my stomach was doing somersaults. Then Trevor came back. His face was unreadable. Calm. Too calm. He walked straight up to Rachel, tapped her on the shoulder, and leaned in. I couldn't hear what he said, but I saw her expression flicker. Barely, like a twitch behind her eyes. Then she nodded slowly, turned to the crowd, and announced that they'd be taking a quick moment alone to freshen up before the toasts. They disappeared into the back hallway. 5 minutes. 10. 15. People started whispering. And then Shelley, ever the loyal gremlin, strutted to the microphone and started giving an impromptu speech about what real love looks like. It was nauseating. I almost left. I should have, but I didn't. Because a few minutes later, Trevor came back alone, and everything fell apart. He walked up to the DJ and said something. The music stopped. The room quieted. People looked around in confusion. Then Trevor stepped up to the mic. He looked pale, shaken, but steady. "I'm sorry to interrupt," he began, "but I need to say something important, and I need you all to really listen." Rachel was nowhere in sight. Trevor took a breath. "The woman I married today is not who she pretended to be. She's been lying to me, to you, to all of us. I have evidence, and I will not be staying married to her." Gasps. Whispers. Someone dropped a fork. He continued, "I won't air everything in public, but let's just say, this marriage is over." Effective immediately, and just like that, he stepped down, handed the mic to the DJ, and walked out of the venue. No shouting, no screaming, just silence. The sound of 100 social bubbles bursting at once. People turned toward each other in confusion. Rachel's bridesmaids scattered like birds. My parents looked frozen in place, mouths open. My mom clutched her clutch purse like it contained a detonator. And me? I didn't move. Didn't blink. Just watched it all unfold. The fallout came quickly. Rachel never reappeared. Word spread that she locked herself in the bridal suite and refused to come out. Shelley ran around trying to do damage control, but everyone was already whispering, speculating. Some people left. Others stayed just to see what happened next. I slipped out quietly. No one stopped me. No one even noticed. But if I thought that was the end of it, I was wrong. The real storm came 3 days later. I woke up to over 40 missed calls. Half from my mom. Half from Rachel. A few from unknown numbers. My voicemail was full. I didn't even check it. I knew exactly what they were going to say. Then came the texts. What did you do? Are you happy now? You ruined her life. You destroyed our family. That last one was from Dad. And it stung more than I cared to admit. Because for a split second, I actually believed it. I didn't go outside that week. I didn't answer any calls. I just sat in my apartment, watching the ceiling again, waiting for the guilt to settle in, wondering if I'd gone too far. Then the doorbell rang. Rachel, still in her bridal robe, I kid you not. No makeup, hair a mess, eyes bloodshot. She looked at me like I was a bug she couldn't squash. You think you're clever? She hissed. You think this makes you better than me? I didn't say anything. She stepped inside like she owned the place. You destroyed everything. Everything. You think Mom and Dad will ever forgive you? You think anyone in this family will ever trust you again? Still, I said nothing. She screamed then. Full volume. Knocked a lamp off my side table. Called me a snake. A parasite. Said I'd always been jealous. Always been weak. That no one ever loved me and no one ever would. I stood there, letting her spit venom for what felt like hours. And when she finally stopped, panting, sweating, trembling with rage, I asked, Why'd you do it, Rachel? She blinked. What? I repeated, Why did you do it? To Trevor. To me. To all of us. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Then, for the first time in her life, she didn't have an answer. She just stormed out. That was the last time I saw her in person. The family fallout came next. My parents called a family meeting. Try to play neutral. We just want to understand. There must be another side. Rachel says you doctored the messages. I laughed. Then I pulled out a second copy of the USB. Played the video of her bragging at the bachelorette party. Their faces went pale. Mom cried. Dad didn't speak for 5 full minutes. Then he said, You should have come to us first. And that's when something in me snapped again. I looked him in the eye and said, You never listened before. Why would I think you'd listen now? And I left. I thought that would be rock bottom. But it wasn't. Because over the next few weeks, I became the villain in every whispered conversation. My extended family took sides. Some called to say they supported me. Most didn't. At work, I had trouble focusing. The story had made the rounds. Rachel's friends were posting cryptic Instagram captions, thinly veiled jabs at snakes in the grass, and jealous siblings. My inbox was full of hate. My voicemail too. I was alone. Completely. For a while, I hated myself for it. Then something shifted. One morning, I got up, opened my laptop, and dove into work. Not because I had to, but because it was mine. It was the one thing no one could take from me. I started pulling long hours again, not as a distraction, but as fuel. I rebuilt my company's website, hired a small marketing team, signed 3 new clients. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes for texts that wouldn't come. Stopped waiting for my parents to call with some kind of apology. I accepted they wouldn't. I went back to the gym. I stopped eating takeout. I slept better, deeper. I started living. And slowly, almost quietly, I realized something. I wasn't just healing. I was rising. They say sometimes you have to burn your past to the ground to grow something new. And in that silence, after the fire, I found peace. But Rachel? Rachel wasn't done. Because just when I thought it was over, when I was finally free, she pulled one last move. And this one almost destroyed everything I'd built. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing after scraps of affection from people who never planned to feed me. I had clarity. Solitude was no longer lonely. It was peaceful, productive, mine. While Rachel tried to sweep the rubble of her wedding disaster under the rug, I quietly rebuilt everything she spent years trying to tear down. Business was booming. My tech consulting firm had finally hit its stride. 2 of my clients had expanded into 6, then 10. I wasn't rolling in millions, but I was comfortable, stable. I moved into a new apartment, better neighborhood, floor-to-ceiling windows, and just enough space to breathe. But peace has a funny way of drawing out the people who can't stand to see you happy. It started with small things. A block number calling every evening at exactly 9:01 p.m., never leaving a message. A sudden review bomb on my company's Google listing, with suspiciously specific insults like, "Owners of bitter man-child, beware." One night, someone even egged my car. I caught it on my building's security footage, a figure in a hoodie, ducking just out of the camera's full frame. Too short to be a random teenage vandal. Then, one evening after a client dinner, I came home to find a handwritten letter taped to my door. "You might have won the first round, but the game isn't over. You forget how much I know about you." No name, no signature, but the handwriting was unmistakable. "Rachel." I should have been afraid. I wasn't. I was angry. See, the thing about Rachel was, she never learned when to stop. She always pushed one step too far. She couldn't help it. Her world ran on control. If she wasn't steering the car, she'd rather crash it. So I did what she never expected. I smiled. Because while she was plotting in the shadows, I'd been preparing in the light. You see, while I was picking up the pieces of my life, I'd also started learning more than just how to run a business. I'd been taking courses in cybersecurity, both for work and because I wanted to protect myself. I started tracing digital breadcrumbs like a hobby. And after that letter, it turned into something more. I didn't just want protection. I wanted leverage. And Rachel left trails like a drunk elephant in snow. I started with the egging incident. I pulled up the timestamp, isolated the figure, enhanced the footage using my company's AI tools, and then cross-referenced the gate with another video I found on Rachel's public Instagram. One where she strutted around at a beach party in heels, mimicking a runway model. Same limp in her left knee. Same slightly tilted head posture. Then I pulled phone data from that night. She'd left her location tracking on in one of her Instagram stories. Stupid, but very on brand. The story disappeared in 24 hours, but not before I screen recorded it and logged her GPS coordinates. She was exactly 0.3 miles from my building when the footage was recorded. Coincidence? Maybe. Then I pulled data from the review bomb on my company page. The reviews were posted using fresh burner accounts, but all created within the same 15-minute window using IP addresses that resolved to a cafe in Midtown, one that Rachel had tagged earlier that same day on a Starbucks selfie. She was getting sloppy, but what really sealed it was the anonymous email I got a week later. It was a fake Gmail account. No name, just a message. "I heard you've been taking on new clients. Curious if you're still as untrustworthy as you were in high school." Attached was a half-edited version of an old yearbook photo of me, doodled on, cropped, captioned with "always second place." I remembered the original. Rachel drew that exact thing back in 10th grade, taped it to my locker for laughs. She didn't even bother changing the font. She wanted me rattled. She wanted me paranoid. But all she did was prove one thing. She hadn't moved on. And that gave me the edge. So I started digging deeper. Not just into her behavior, but into her life. What she'd been doing since the wedding. Where she was working. Who she was talking to. And the more I uncovered, the more I realized how fragile her world really was. After Trevor left, she moved back in with our parents. Claimed it was just temporary, but according to one of my cousins, who still follows her on social, she'd been mooching off them for months. No job, no rent, no plan. But the real twist? She tried to sue Trevor, filed a civil suit for emotional damages and breach of marital contract. Except she didn't have a leg to stand on. The messages I exposed were submitted as evidence against her. The case was tossed out, and because she filed it publicly, I was able to get access to the court records, which is where I found something interesting. A statement Rachel made under oath. The USB drive was maliciously planted by someone who forged my private conversations. I believe my brother had something to do with it. She dragged me into a court document. Without telling me, she wasn't just angry anymore. She was trying to ruin me. And now it was personal. That's when I decided it was time to go all in. But I wasn't going to do it alone. I reached out to the one person I'd avoided for months, Trevor. At first, I didn't expect him to respond. Why would he? I ruined his wedding day, exposed his private life to 100 strangers. But to my surprise, he replied within the hour. "Been meaning to talk to you. Coffee." We met at a quiet cafe downtown. He looked thinner, tired, but calmer. He thanked me, said he was embarrassed it took so long to see who Rachel really was. Told me she tried to contact him several times since the wedding. that she even showed up at his office once, sobbing about how her brother lied and forged everything. He said she sounded rehearsed, hollow, like someone auditioning for sympathy rather than seeking forgiveness. That's when I showed him the reviews, the footage, the letter. He leaned back, exhaled through his nose, and said, "She's unraveling." I nodded. "And she's going to drag us both down if we don't do something." So we made a pact. Trevor had connections, real ones. A few legal, a few technical. He offered to help trace the burner accounts, confirm the harassment trail. Meanwhile, I focused on the bigger picture. Rachel didn't just need to be stopped. She needed to be exposed for what she really was. Not in some petty, vengeful way, but publicly, undeniably, professionally, which is where my next ally came in, someone from Rachel's past. Her old roommate, Maya. They'd lived together during Rachel's first year of college. Maya had reached out to me a year ago when she'd seen some Facebook post Rachel made mocking me. Said, "I just want you to know you're not crazy." She did the same thing to me. Back then, I ignored it. Now, I reached out. Maya was more than willing to talk. Apparently, Rachel had tormented her through their entire lease, stolen clothes, maxed out a shared credit card, even spread rumors that got Maya fired from her campus job. And just like with me, she'd never fought back. Until now. We met, compared notes, shared screenshots. Her stories filled in gaps I didn't even know were there. Together, we built a timeline, a pattern, a history. Rachel didn't just manipulate people. She weaponized them. And now we had everything we needed to prove it. The plan was simple. Rachel had just landed a freelance gig writing for a mid-sized fashion blog. A vanity gig, sure, but she'd been bragging about it nonstop online, calling herself a style journalist and creative consultant. The site was run by a woman named Kendra, who prided herself on curating a drama-free, empowering space for female creators. So we sent Kendra a package. No threats, no demands, just a carefully curated dossier of Rachel's messages, quotes from her civil suit, videos of her calling Trevor a bank account with a pulse, and the recent online harassment, complete with timestamps and IP logs. We didn't ask her to fire Rachel. We just asked her to consider what kind of person she was platforming. It took 3 days. Then Rachel's bio disappeared from the site. Her articles? Pulled. She tried to play it off on Instagram, saying she left to pursue other opportunities, but we knew better. And Rachel? She knew someone was behind it. She just didn't know how many of us there were, or how much worse it was about to get. Because the final stage of the plan wasn't about work. It was about the one place she still felt untouchable. Our family. And that's where things got complicated. Because if I wanted to finish this, really finish it, I'd have to destroy every illusion my parents still held about who Rachel was, and what I was capable of. It took me 28 years to understand that sometimes justice doesn't come with applause. It doesn't look like a courtroom speech or a viral takedown. Sometimes justice is quiet. A subtle correction. A truth finally exposed to the right eyes. I didn't want revenge for attention. I didn't even want Rachel to suffer. Not really. I just wanted peace. But peace, with people like Rachel, only exists when their power is taken away. And the last bit of power she had left was our parents. Despite everything, despite the wedding disaster, the lawsuit, the harassment, they still believed in her version of reality. Still thought of her as their shining girl who just lost her way for a bit. I was still the bitter younger brother in their minds. The one who always took things too far. The one who needed to let things go. They clung to that illusion like a raft in a storm because the alternative, that they'd enabled a manipulative, self-absorbed daughter for over 2 decades, was too painful to admit. I knew they wouldn't listen to reason. They never had. So I stopped trying to argue. And I started planning. My parents were celebrating their 35th wedding anniversary that spring. They'd rented out a rustic lodge just outside the city. Real wine and cheese vibe. Dozens of extended family members invited. Speeches, dancing, catered dinner, the whole thing. Rachel, of course, had helped plan it. She positioned herself as the hostess, made the invites, curated the menu, designed the layout. She needed to be the center of it all again, even if it wasn't her name on the banner. I was hesitant to go, but that's when Maya gave me the idea. Why not let her dig the hole herself, she said. All you need to do is shine a light on it. So I RSVP'd yes. I wore a tailored navy suit. Nothing flashy, just clean, respectable. I brought a bottle of wine and a small envelope. Inside that envelope was a single piece of paper, a printed transcript. Just one page. Rachel's own words from a group chat we'd recovered, dated 2 weeks after the wedding. My parents are so desperate to pretend nothing happened. It's honestly sad. I could burn their house down, and they'd still ask me to cut the cake at Christmas. Adam's pathetic. He thinks he's better than me just because he runs some nerd company. Joke's on him. Mom still calls me her favorite. Honestly, if I ever need real money, I'll just fake a mental health spiral. Dad'll wire me cash before I finish the sentence. The guests started arriving around 5. By 6, the speeches were in full swing. My dad stood up, thanked everyone for coming, told his usual jokes about marriage being a long hike with bad knees and no trail map. People laughed. Mom cried. It was heartfelt, sincere. Then Rachel took the mic. I just want to say how grateful I am to have parents like you, she began. You've supported me through everything. You've always had my back, even when I didn't deserve it. A few people clapped. My mom beamed. My dad raised his glass. And I just want you to know, Rachel continued, that no matter what life throws at us, we're family. And family means loyalty. I stood up. Couldn't agree more. She turned, startled. The mic was still in her hand. I walked slowly toward the front, envelope in hand, all eyes shifting toward me. I have something I'd like to share, I said. It'll only take a minute. Rachel froze. Adam, not now. But it was already too late. I turned toward the crowd and passed the paper to my father. This is from a chat Rachel was in, I said, 2 weeks after her wedding. He took it, looked confused. Read the first few lines. His mouth moved slightly, silently, eyes scanning the page. Then his brow furrowed. Jaw tightened. He handed it to my mother. She read it, then looked up at Rachel. Silence. Total silence. No music. No murmurs. Just the sound of a woman trying and failing not to crumble. I can explain, Rachel stammered. It was a joke. It was, someone hacked me. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Because just then, Trevor entered the room. He walked straight up to my parents, shook their hands, turned to the room, and said, just in case there were any doubts about the authenticity of that message, I've got the full chat archive saved. He looked directly at Rachel. You never changed, did you? She took a step back. Why are you even here? I got invited, he said calmly. By Adam. My mom's voice cracked. Is this true? Rachel tried again. You're seriously going to believe them over your own daughter? And my dad, stoic, composed, cold in a way I'd never seen, looked her dead in the eye and said, right now, I don't know who my daughter is. The fallout was swift. The anniversary party didn't end with cake or music. It ended with a whisper. Guests quietly gathered their things. Some offered me nods of support. Others just kept their heads down, unsure what to say. My parents sat in silence. Rachel stormed out, tears streaking down her cheeks, not because she was sorry, but because she'd finally lost control of the narrative. And me? I stepped outside, breathed in the cold night air. I wasn't shaking, wasn't smiling, just steady, solid. The next morning, I got a call from my mom. She didn't apologize. Not directly, but she said, I think I need time to process some things. I told her to take all the time she needed. That was 6 months ago. Rachel moved to the West Coast, changed her number, blocked half the family. I heard she's working at a boutique as a part-time consultant. Her social media is private, silent, no new posts, no new smiles. Trevor and I still talk sometimes. We're not friends exactly, but there's a mutual respect there, a quiet understanding, like two survivors nodding across a battlefield. Maya started a podcast, called it Toxic Ties. I helped her build the website. And me? I'm doing better than ever. Not because I won, but because I stopped playing her game. People like Rachel survive on chaos, on spinning truth into lies until you start to doubt your own memories. But once the mask slips, once the light hits them just right, they can't hide anymore. And when they fall, it's not loud. It's not cinematic. It's quiet, like a curtain dropping after a play no one clapped for. I don't know if Rachel will ever change. I don't know if my parents will ever truly see what I went through. But I do know this. The next time someone tries to write me out of my own story, I won't stay silent. Not ever again. And that's the real ending.